just about winning, man. That's all that matters is, you take the challenge defensively against your man, and you're in the right spots defensively, and you're pushing the pace offensively. I feel like I would put up my team in a great chance to win. And when you have special players like the guys that we have, you got to utilize all of them, and that's the beautiful thing about being in a team sport.
Kyrie, meanwhile, was knocked out in Game 1 of the 2015 Finals, remember, with that knee injury. Then in 2016, outplayed Curry, and as we all remember, he hit that game winner in Game 7. Max, who would you rather have in these finals? Would you go Curry or Kyrie?
Kyrie. All that terrible sports cliche stuff about he's a closer and all that stuff, that applies to Kyrie. And I understand on the one hand where it's like past is prologue, but you know what? Just because a guy has choked a few times or has underperformed in a big moment doesn't mean he'll continue doing that forever, and vice versa. Just because Kyrie came up big doesn't mean he'll continue doing that. I think it's a little bit different in the NBA than, say, in baseball, Molly, where a guy can have a bad World Series at the plate and he was just out of sync and, it doesn't predict future performance. In the NBA, I think it does. I think that there's something in Kyrie that plays up to the big moment, because I've seen it now consistently toward the end of games in big moments. And whatever else you want to say about Steph, he had some good games in the finals and whatever else. Now we've seen in consecutive finals, once he was injured, once he wasn't, or something less than himself physically. Last year, I'll acknowledge that, but the year before he wasn't.
Well, the year before they won, so as long as they win,
a lesser version of himself. But they won, and
these
questions, it was LeBron without Kyrie or Kevin Love.
It's like the last two questions are happening in isolation, because you go from saying that all these advanced stats are why Jordan is better to saying that I just got a feeling about Kyrie. Like, how can you go from saying stats matter to now saying that stats don't matter? Like, I feel like Kyrie is clutch.
In fact, in the Jordan-LeBron debate, you would also take that exact thing I'm identifying in Kyrie is Jordan. He owns that. He has that more than anyone who ever lived. And LeBron does not have it to the extent that Jordan has. But that's the subjective stuff, if you want to talk about that. I was trying to keep it objectively, throughout the course of a season, Steph is better than Kyrie. But also objectively, in terms of their performances in the finals, Kyrie has been better than Steph, Dominique. There's no way around it.
I mean,
Steph has now consistently been some lesser version of himself in the finals.
There's no arguing that Kyrie has been better than Steph in the finals, but I am not one that's going to accept the idea that somehow Steph is mentally frail, and just because the center of the court says finals this time, and it didn't say it before, that somehow he's going to be a bad player. He's averaging 31 points throughout the playoffs on 57% shooting. I want that guy. And it's not only his statistics that matter, it's his impact on the game. And Kyrie is a terrific player, but the way that he plays is with the ball in his hands. Steph can do that tremendously well, but when Steph doesn't have the ball in his hands, he draws the defense in a way that opens everything else up. Not only does he draw the defense when he's moving to get open for shots, but when he sets down screens or back picks and those sorts of things, guys double Steph and his team gets layups. So if I'm building a team, if I want to win, if I want someone who's going to impact my team offensively better than the other, I think it's Steph Curry, and they're both kind of defensive, I don't want to say liabilities, but they're not great on defense, so you can't go there for the advantage. But I think that the numbers and those big moments are swaying your opinion, when in actuality, the two-time MVP, one-time unanimous, Steph Curry, is a much better player that most reasonable people would rather have on their team in any time. Your only argument is that somehow he gets in the finals and gets scared, which I just think is absurd.
No, there's more of an argument than there's more. Normally, I agree with you. Under normal circumstances, I'd take Steph, because with Steph, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and with Kyrie, somehow it's less. Because their skill sets are similar. They can both shoot. Steph shoots better. They both have crazy handles. Kyrie has better handles.
Right.
Neither one is a really big point guard, and they both play off ball. But Kyrie especially, you mentioned Steph does more kind of unselfish things off ball, and I agree with that. And Steph tries harder, more consistently on defense than Kyrie. But when Kyrie wants to turn on the defense, he's capable of going to a higher level than Steph. And Kyrie doesn't have the stats that Steph or Westbrook or some of the other high-flying point guards do in terms of the numbers, or super fast point guards who can get to the paint and shoot and distribute, because he's playing with LeBron, and LeBron recognizes that the way to optimize the team is sometimes that Kyrie's off ball and LeBron is the primary ball handler, and that makes people not realize how good Kyrie is all the time. But the point is, generally, you're right. Steph Curry has a more consistent effort as a great player than Kyrie and affects his team's offense better than Kyrie on a more consistent basis. But Kyrie has a gear that he's shown he can go into on the defensive end and on the offensive end, by the way, that Steph doesn't quite match. And in those high leverage moments, Kyrie's able to go there, whereas Steph not only doesn't go there, but in fact goes in the opposite direction. Talked recently about how it still haunts him, the behind-the-back pass to Klay Thompson in a one-point game in the finals at home in Game 7. A careless pass. He somehow turns into a lesser version of himself in consecutive finals. And so doesn't mean he'll be that these finals. But, you know, at a certain point, if someone starts to tell you who they are, you got to believe them. And until I see other evidence from Steph, why would I not take Kyrie
here's
in
some
the
evidence
finals?
for
I
you.
just saw this.
Here's some evidence for you. So in the last 2 years, in 37 minutes of clutch time, Steph Curry has 62 points. For LeBron and Kyrie combined, it's 92 minutes, and they have 64 combined. So he's good in the clutch. I think there are some big moments here and there that put blemishes on Curry's clutch moments, and they're also in the other direction for Kyrie. There's some big moments where we remember that shot from last year, and all of a sudden he's just a kind of world-beating clutch player. But in actuality, Steph hasn't been bad in the clutch. He had a bad finals last year, and we both accept that he was somewhat injured. The finals before that, they won. That's all that matters. He didn't dominate, but the team won.
Let's stop right there. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the finals that they won. They did win. And in fact, the kind of 5-out, death lineup and everything, who was it? Was it Arnovitz? Someone had a column about it. I apologize for not remembering it offhand. Right after that finals, about how they discovered once they took David Lee out and put Draymond in, and during the finals, how Steph realized he could be used to draw attention and all these things. And so even give him extra credit for that, though his numbers weren't quite what they were supposed to be. He was facing a Cavs team where Matthew Dellavedova was the second best player. They had their hands full. It went 6 games because LeBron James was that much better than everyone else on either team. Yes, Steph won the finals that year, but it is obvious that the only reason they won is because the Cavs were missing their second and third best player. So to simply point to that and say they won, therefore he's clutch, he had overwhelming firepower on his side compared to what the Cavs had, and still it went a tough 6 games, partly because
they won, therefore
Steph
they
wasn't the best version of himself.
It's that they won, so we can't necessarily bang on Steph. Like, they won. He carried his team to victory. We can't really bang on him for that. The last year,
he didn't carry him to victory.
He was a part of the team. We just talked about how his points and his assists are not indicative of his impact on the game. You're trying to argue that Steph had no impact on that series, that J.R. Smith chasing him all around and them doubling him off of pick and rolls, that didn't have any impact on the series?
Who won the MVP? Look, I think Steph was actually the MVP of the Warriors. I thought Steph was the MVP of the Warriors. But I will say this. It was a performance that, even though I thought he was probably deserved MVP of the Warriors, not only was LeBron so obviously the MVP of the series, but
I mean, that doesn't help your argument. Who won the MVP?
Right giving it to Steph. They gave it to Iguodala.
Who won the MVP of the regular season this year? That does not mean, or who will win it. That does not mean.
I'm not arguing regular season.
I'm just saying that just because someone got the MVP does not mean that they were impactful. That means people were excited about watching them play. Like, LeBron's the best player in the league, but he didn't get the
Dominique,
MVP.
you're missing my point. I
don't need the sports media to tell me who's most impactful. I can look and tell you who's more impactful.
He had a performance. He had a performance such that people didn't feel right giving him the MVP. Whether or not you agree that he deserved it, and I also agree he deserved it, I understand why they didn't give it to him, and his team won against an undermanned team.
All right. We got to leave it there. So in the battle of the point guards, Max, your team, Kyrie, Dominique, riding with Curry in the finals. Can you guys please be the tiebreaker at home? Get on Twitter and vote on that. But when we come back, more baseball, Max. Bryce Harper is known for slugging at the plate. I can't wait to talk about this. But find out what slugging could keep him on the bench for a while. And Brady versus Rodgers. It is the most debated topic in the NFL right now. But coming up, you'll find out from Rodgers' teammate why that bad man is the best in the business. Keep it here. It's First Take.